Alright, I'm here today to interview a young man randomly. He is 21 years of age. Alright, first question. Give a brief description of your experience of political socialization. Where is your hometown? Is your political opinion similar to your parents' views? Are there any events in your life that have changed your opinions about politics?
Well, I am from Union City, Ohio. It's in a rural county called Dark, and the main thing that is there is manufacturing as well as agriculture. Not a whole lot to do there. It's mainly strictly religious. It's very conservative, and it's very built on a values-based sort of system. As far as my political opinions, they differ from my parents. They are somewhat similar. However, I am a registered Republican. They are registered Democrats. And as for events in my life that have changed my opinions about politics, I have most definitely undergone. Having experience on political campaigns and being very involved in the county party, I have known and I've seen and experienced times that are the party's intended for activism, but to be completely honest with you, politics is not a catalyst for change. It's not something that necessarily is activism. It's mostly advocacy towards one's goals and ambitions, and I see politicians all the time catering to whatever the majority base wants, not necessarily what they need. And when you are in politics and public service, you're expected mostly to know the needs, actual needs, and to know how to implement and get those needs and obtain them within your capacity as a politician. However, anymore, I've seen a lot of corruption and just little games, little tiny things that kids do in high school that you would not expect from a mature, politically apt adult engaging in. These are things where people would lie and just blatantly go under false names and submit things into the newspapers about candidates who are within their own party that they're personally have a hatred towards, which I don't think is right. So those are the main experiences that I've experienced within local campaigns. As far as going out into the state, which I've also been very active in the governor's re-election last year, that was something that was necessarily, there wasn't so much corruption within that system that I experienced firsthand. Now I'm sure it exists somewhere, but I'm not necessarily haven't been exposed to it, and I fear the day when it will happen, because those are the individuals who have the most power and influence. So I think I'm more prepared now, but it's not something that I want to occur and want to undergo.
Okay, next question. Are there enough job opportunities in the United States for most people to experience upward social mobility?
The first part of this question is a definite yes. There's enough jobs. There's plenty of jobs for people to do, whether that's in commercial, real estate, whether that's in manufacturing, industry, agriculture. There's a lot somebody can do. Whether you are 16 years old looking for a job, looking to buy that new car, used car, whatever it may be, trying to save money for college, to being 70 plus years old and having to go back to a job and work for more money. I mean, that's offered right there at Walmart as a greeter. I mean, that's the stereotypical job. I mean, I'm sure there's more jobs that they can do. However, in terms of social mobility, not necessarily, because I am seeing growing rates of disqualification on people. There's a lot of structural unemployment that is not accounted for within the national unemployment rate. For instance, people aren't getting enough college degrees, people aren't getting certifications, people are not getting the education and the experiences that they must know and at least have a decent grasp on and get better at within a career. People are just growing in disqualification, and without that education, without the certification, that limits social mobility. However, how do you get an education is another key thing. I know it costs money, but you get the money if you apply for scholarships. If you have the mindset and if you have the goals, you can achieve greater things. It's not all about the people you know necessarily. It truly isn't, because when it comes down to it, fundamentally, it's what you know and how you put those skills to use in establishing those connections. Me coming from a lower middle class, blue-collared working environment, I can hold firsthand, hey, I'm a first-generation student, because I had the mindset, I was raised to be a hard worker. And the more hard-working values and ethic that a student has and puts to good use, the better they will be, and the better their families will be in the future.
Absolutely. Do you feel that you have a voice in American politics? Do you think that the government responds to your needs and interests?
I don't think that the government should respond or cater to anyone's necessary needs or interests. By that, they need to not necessarily respond, but be proactive in their approach. If they see something coming, they need to act upon it then and not until after it happens. And that's what I'm seeing a lot in today's politics, because we are seeing a growing amount of disqualification, not only within the middle class, not only within the lower class or just common workers, not just the public, it's within the actual government itself. You know, public service anymore is becoming a problem because they cannot realize the problems that will be facing on down the road. They only realize what we're facing now. And that's the problem that was not necessarily occurring at the formation of this country. I mean, the forefathers set it up for success. They didn't set it up for failure. And now it seems like that's what we're going towards. And having that mindset of just, we need to be proactive about things and just make sure it doesn't actually occur. I mean, that's the steps that we need to be taking, and at least within public service. But in terms of my voice, I would say I have at least a little, because I know that government, more than, honestly, they do cater to the needs of interest groups and special interests. That is proven fact, and that's been developing over the years as more associations and more lobbying has become much more profitable, and just something that's grown out of all the issues that we've experienced as a nation. I don't think it's up to an individual to change things. I think it's culture, it's society. It really is when it comes down to it. As we are facing into a new world where LGBTQ plus communities are demanding more, and we have become more understanding of that community, that's where the real change happens. And government cannot impose any sort of change in someone's perspective. Because, hey, I break half the laws anyways. That doesn't mean I'm going to change what I do.
Okay. Do you think that the federal and local governments are effective at dealing with threats to public health and safety, such as terrorism, broken infrastructure, severe weather, or disease outbreaks?
Quite frankly, I believe they are. I believe that they are provided the resources, and that they, by extension, are able to provide those resources for the public to get them out of those situations. By that I mean the state governments as well as the federal governments have provided a great system of breakdown of what needs to be done. And they pass that on to local governments, whether that may be the police, whether that may be a task force, whether that may be an emergency sort of deal. I believe local communities as well as departments are rather extremely effective of handling these situations because they know how their people will react. I mean, they live every day working with the public within that community. They know best of how to react to it, and they know best how to provide those resources.
Okay, what do you think are the most important issues affecting the United States today? And why do you think that?
The most important issues, I would have to say, are not necessarily in terms of policy. People aren't looking at policy anymore. They don't care about economics as much as, they say they do. People aren't looking at the financial sector and saying this needs fixed, other than just take down Wall Street and the Feds altogether. People need to look into that and actually weigh and say, hey, they need to realize and understand what the Fed actually does and how really beneficial it actually is. They need to look at Wall Street and say, hey, this actually does affect international trade. I mean, this is what determines our prices, and this is why they're so low now compared to what they were years ago. Look at the 70s, people. Look at the background. Look at the history. I mean, the issues that we're facing as a nation currently today is misinformation and just total lack of respect for what's actually happened in the past and how we together have pulled ourselves into preventing that from happening now and in the future. But we need to look back at that again, because we are seeing things come back, and we need to look past the legalization of marijuana. We need to look past the legalization of same-sex marriage, and we need to fix our economy. We need to look at the financial sector and see how that needs to be reformed. We don't need to see how it needs to be totally thrown out, because that will throw off our system. We need to see how it can be changed and how it can be changed gradually over time without impacting the economy in a negative manner.
Absolutely. How much time do you spend reading or watching the news? What are your favorite sources of news?
I don't watch the news. I don't watch TV. Frankly, one, because I don't have time, and two, it's mostly commercialized and it's very marketing based. I am not persuaded by some hot model that's on Fox News. I am not persuaded by some fiery rhetorical orator that's on NBC. I'm not mentioning names. But, either way, the only sort of broadcasting channel that I watch that covers politics and issues that's going on will be C-SPAN. That's about it. And that's boring as hell, so I don't want to commit my time to watching something that doesn't necessarily keep my interest at the least. It's not necessarily stimulating. I do read the news quite often. I do read the New York Times. I read the Financial Times. I read the Boston Globe. I read the Cincinnati Courier as well as the Columbus Dispatch. I read The Economist. That's a London-based newspaper and publication, and the Financial Times is another UK-based newspaper. But other than that, that's about it that I do with news.
Will you vote in the off-year elections for your local offices and issues? Why or why not? What are the most important issues in your state or hometown?
I most definitely will. I believe that this is a right that must be exercised as much as possible. No matter how much, we are diminished as an individual voter in terms of influencing government's outcome. When you put the masses together, we are the real people here. We are the ones that affect public interests, that drive corporate interest, because if we boycott, that they're going to change their ways. That's happened in the past. But yeah, that's why I will be voting. But the issues that are most important necessarily to our town would mostly be in terms of infrastructure, child care provision, as well as after school programs. We have a lot of kids that are out on the streets doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that they never did in the past even. That's another thing that's concerning to our local community. As for our state, right now I am aware that there are a lot of tuition discussions going on